Hi, thank you guys for coming. We want to talk about the Fallacy best practices, and basically, this is coming from a place of frustration for me. In my role at Foundation, I work with a lot of different SDRs at a lot of different companies, and so often I'll walk into accounts, or I'll have SDRs, or even worse, CEOs who say, oh, well, I read online that this is how you do SDR work, or that this is the thing we're going to do. And there's no real thought behind it other than I read it on LinkedIn. I saw it on Twitter. I read this book. You know, my investor told me that we're going to follow this sales methodology. And it just proliferates and proliferates. And even worse, when you see the clickbait articles that say this one simple trick will triple your conversion rate. And every time I see that, my skin just crawls because I know that it does nothing but proliferate bad practices, really. So I want to talk a little bit today. I brought Dawn along as a favor to me because Dawn is one of the most brilliant marketing minds I think I've ever worked with.
So much sucking up today.
Yes, lots of it, lots of it.
Just kidding.
It's sales. But to talk about, kind of the sales side and the marketing side of where this stuff comes from and really kind of trying to advocate and help and at least, if nothing else, start a discussion so you guys can actually go back and figure out what's actually a best practice and what's best practice for you. Mm-hmm. So we're also going to look at our notes down here because we don't have a speaker thing. So let's just kind of do a quick poll for a second. How many of you guys have sent or told someone to send emails with something along the lines of, how many of you guys know about the alligator email? It's an email. Yeah, thank you for the one who said ugh. Okay, so it's an email that goes something like, it's a breakup email that says, hi, I've emailed a few times and you haven't responded. That means either A, you're not interested, B, you're not getting these emails, or C, you're being eaten by an alligator and I should call animal control to come rescue you. I am loving the faces of people who haven't heard this before. The variations of it. This was a really big thing about, 5, 6, 7 years ago? And now people are spinning it up to be different things now. But how many of you guys have seen or received that email? Brilliant. So I got a few others here.
Another one is the one I get all the time as a C-level executive. Hi, can you I know you're busy. Can you put me in touch with someone who might know if this is a fit or not?
How many of you guys have sent or received that one? A lot of hands up there. Okay, and how about, who's the best person for me to speak with on your team to see if our product's a fit? A lot of the same hands. Thank you guys for being honest. This is the whole point. If everyone is doing these emails, if 80% of this room is doing this, and you've got all these other teams, if everyone is doing it, how can it be a best practice? And how do you get around the fact that everybody is saying the same thing? If everybody's doing it, it by default can't be a best practice, especially when it comes to something specific like messaging.
So let me give you an example. When I was at Mattermark, I was a CMO there. And the SDRs who caught me my first week there, when I was just getting on board and not having so many emails.
2 weeks before I started there.
They were the smart ones, right? They engaged with me very quickly. But after our funding announcement came out, I got about 200 emails a day, and 80% of them were one of these forms of variation, right? One of these emails. And it got to the point where, you're really busy. And I started out in sales, and I think the best marketers start out in sales because they have a lot of empathy for what they go through. They've been through this, and it's hard. And I always tried to be polite, but it got to the point where, no, I didn't get eaten by an alligator. I kind of just think you're an asshole, right? And it's not very nice. It's not very fun. But that's where it got. And you have to really think about, what am I going to do to outreach? There are best practices. I love best practices. I'm a marketer. I have to scale organizations. I have to scale them to 25, then $100 million. So frameworks and best practices work really good, but you have to adapt them to what you're doing. You can't just sit there and say, this person does that, I'm going to try it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
All right. So let's just talk for a second about where do best practices come from? How does this even happen? All right? If you understand where something comes from, you can then go and actually kind of break up the cycle. So it starts with somebody posting an idea. One of those lovely thought leaders that enjoys getting up in front of crowds and telling people what to do, but how much do they actually know? You propose a strategy. No one ever goes out to intentionally spread bad practices, but you're sharing, hey, this thing worked for me. The problem comes when somebody else validates it. Hey, I tried this, so Sam's going to go try it, and now Sam's at another company. Now we got 2 companies saying, hey, this worked for us. Then you've got other people, then you've got dozens and dozens more. It spreads like a virus. Just like it goes viral, same thing, and then it starts failing.
And I'm going to be a cynic a minute because you say that people don't try to lie. They actually do. Okay. That's what we're all about. You fake it till you make it, right? And so when people kind of spread these things like, oh, I was interviewing at a company and I was talking about their growth, and he's like, well, we're going to grow this much. And And I went back and I read an article that one of their salespeople did with Sales Hacker, like, oh, we grew this company to 10 million ARR in only 2 months. We got the 3D, we got the 2D, 3D, right? We're right on track. So when he gave me that number, I'm like, well, based on this article, you're only going to go 20% this year. I don't want to come to your company. You guys are really screwing it up. And he had to admit to me that that article put out there was a complete lie, right? So you just need to be, this is all Silicon Valley, and people, maybe it's not intentional, but a lot of these things are pure exaggeration in many cases. Sometimes they're not, but you just kind of have to look at things with that a little bit of a cynical eye. And we're not here trying to be negative Nellies or however you want to say it, but it's more kind of when you're in a startup, when there's so much pressure, you don't have room for mistakes, right? You make one mistake or you don't hit your goals, the investors are all over you. So you really got to sit there and say, when I have a best practice, is this something that's going to work for me?
And that's what we want to talk about, is how to actually do that. So let's talk about, to know where they come from, let's talk about why they fail. The 4 biggest and most common reasons why best practices can fail. One is they're advocating a short-term win over a long-term win. Great example of this is, in my mind, call frequency. I've seen tons of articles out there say, you can war dial, hit them up 2-3 times in a day, don't leave a voicemail, try a bunch. That could potentially work, but that's a perfect example of a short-term win. Yes, you are probably going to get more reactions, but long-term, you're going to create a reputation as being a company that will harass people into getting reactions. So that's a short-term win, but a long-term fail. That's one way that things can go wrong. You're going to do Caswell.
No, you're actually going to do this whole thing.
I'm doing the whole thing? Okay, great. Causal ambiguity is basically where you don't know the full story. One of the biggest, hardest things about a sales cycle is there are a million different components. It comes down to the person, the product, the process, all those things, and those are all completely unique at every company. So any one of those variables, is this email doing well because the email actually is this brilliant messaging? Or is the email doing well because the CEO just gave an interview to some article and you guys just have a bunch more people looking at your website and being more familiar with your company? There's no way to know unless you keep testing and iterating and stuff like that. But there's a lot of that ambiguity. Is this actually improving because of what you're doing or because of something else that's going on? And being constantly aware of what those other things might be and trying to ride that wave can really help. One of the most common ones we see, especially, how many of you guys are within the first year of building an SDR org? Okay? This is the one that you are the most scared of. People come in all the time, they come with their frameworks and their best practices and say, we were able to do this at my last company, therefore we have to be able to redo it here. And this is especially big with a lot of, I hate to say this, but a lot of senior revenue leaders. It's, well, my last org, my SDRs did this much activity and that much, and it was all in the CRM, and therefore we just need to replicate that here. Not realizing that the last company they were at had a successful exit and was a unicorn, and now you're starting back over at day 0, and it's their first time building an SDR from scratch. As sales operations and sales development leaders, we have to be able to go up and call a spade a spade. Yes, this did work before, but that doesn't mean it will work here. This is new, this is different, and start talking about why it is. Not saying it's wrong, but at least have the discussion. And then just going viral. Just honestly, the more you see something proliferated on the internet, the more skeptical I would be, simply because if everybody's doing it, it probably means everyone's doing it. That means you're going to saturate the market. So those are kind of the 4 ways that things can fail. So that alligator email, when it came out, I'm sure the first couple thousand people that got it thought it was hysterical. It's great. The 30th time I got it, I wanted to wring someone's neck. And if I told my team, I actually straight up told my teams, if any of you send this email, I will seriously consider firing you. I still vent about that, even though no one knows what it is anymore. So this is, how many of you guys know who Andy Grove is? I had a bet with Dawn about this.
I told you.
Crud, I lost, I owe you coffee. Andy Grove was the guy who built Intel. Okay? Oh yeah, that thing. Yeah, hardware, crazy. So Andy was brilliant for a lot of different things, but he's famous for 2 kind of big quotes. One is adapt or die, which you guys have probably heard. And this, I love this. Success breeds complacency. I need another cup of coffee. Complacency breeds failure, and only the paranoid survive. That's what I want you guys to be. I want you to be paranoid every time you see anything that lauds itself as a best practice. So let's talk about what this looks like. So we all know this. Best practice, SDR should set a meeting a day, right? So how many of you guys have meetings or have started from a general best practice like this when you were building your comp structure? I did. I built 3 different teams off this number. Okay? So you start with something like that. And we're even going with Vorsight. This is like one of the top, 3-4 think tanks in the country? It's great stuff. So they released a whole study, and this is all in the deck, so you can go take a look at the numbers, talking about how if you're an outbound SDR, you absolutely have the ability to set a meeting a day. And they put the math behind it. They talk about data, activity, and meetings. So great. Your CEO gives you this and says, great, go replicate it. Here's the problem. Look at what they're dealing with. 81% of their list had direct dials and 95% had preset research. How many of you guys have access to data like that? No hand. Okay, one person. You are very lucky. All right? They're expecting their SDRs to do 120 calls a day. How many of you guys use a dialer? Maybe a third of the room. Great. That's not too bad. How many, those of you who are probably closer to my age, how many of you have actually made 100 dials in a day? Manually, old school dial. Okay? Is that fun? Yeah. Well, yeah, you got some brown. You got some brown on your nose. You might want to wipe that off. It's exhausting. Nobody wants to do that. And we wonder why SDRs have high burnout. And they're supposed to, on top of that, add 11 contacts a day to the CRM. Good Lord. These guys are working. I don't even know how they're working. And they're targeting directors and VPs and having 4.3 conversations a day. That's the math behind how they're getting to one meeting a day. How many of you can hit every single one of those metrics given what you have right now in place?
It doesn't make it a bad best practice, though.
No.
I mean, the problem is you have to adapt it for what you have, right? Because all of a sudden you start putting these numbers in front of your sales leader, and they're expecting these things. Then everything is misaligned. You're going to fail. Your leader's going to look like a failure because they haven't done it. But that doesn't mean the best practice is bad. It means you just need to adjust it. So let's go back to those numbers. Okay. So you have direct dials. Okay, you've bought data.org, you've bought something, you have that. It takes years to build that up. It's not very hard to go in your database and find out what the percentage of direct dials are that you have. Find that number and adjust it. Okay, and research. Let's talk a lot about research. Who's familiar with marketing ops and sales ops, right? A lot of those companies can build it so that research is completely automated, right? So that all of a sudden some information grabs data from 6 Sense, Mattermark, whatever, or we used to be Mattermark, and all of a sudden says that research that used to be manual, 5 minutes, is now 3 minutes, right? Well, you multiply 3 minutes times 120 calls, that's 6 hours of time, right? And so if you don't have that, you have to keep into consideration, how long does it take me to research someone, okay? And so take that best practice, and then let's talk a little bit about targeting VPs, okay? Mm-hmm. VPs don't want to be bothered. CMOs don't want to be bothered. I do not want to be bothered with a call. I have someone that I'm just going to tell you, I know everyone says to get to the VPs, but VPs are strategic in nature. I know a lot about technology, I know a lot about ops, but I go out and I hire the best marketing ops person I can, right? So you are wasting your time coming after me because I'm just going to tell you to talk to James, and when you tell me to make an introduction, I'm going to say no, right? Because he's the one who does all of the, James is the one, or Chris at Mattermark, they were the one who did all the research, right? So you have to sit there. The reason Vendition was able to get to the VPs is because they're a research firm.
Foresight.
Or Force, whatever they are. Sorry. Foresight. But the reason that they were able to get in with the VC is because they're a research firm. And as a CMO, as a marketer, I actually need something from them, meaning I need my company mentioned in their research. So of course they're going to be able to target the directors and VPs, right? Because they're going to want something back. So you have to understand who your audience is. Again, a decent best practice, but you've got to adapt the data for what you're doing. And you have to understand. And that whole VP hitting the C-level is a fallacy depending on what your stuff is. And you're going to get a much wider audience from like your sell technology to a marketing ops person. They're dorks. They love to talk to vendors. It's great stuff. Dorks with loving. I mean that lovingly.
No, I'll say this just on a quick note. I firmly believe that one of the reasons I've had a reasonably successful sales career is because I consider myself an uber nerd. If anyone wants to talk sci-fi, science fiction, Star Trek, Star Wars, I'm here for you. Yeah, don't get me started on what I do in my spare time with the costumes. But that really helps. I'm calling. Okay, that sounded way worse than I meant it. But no, the point is, I'm calling IT directors, and I can start making sci-fi jokes. Oh my gosh, A, it's a girl that's calling me and can actually talk tech, and B, hey, she's making sci-fi jokes. That's awesome and new and unique. So it's all about those relationships.
I cannot.
Fair enough. All right, so let's talk about like why this stuff doesn't work. So another example, it's a short-term win. If you wanted to replicate that activity, you will burn people out so fast and earn a reputation for being a shop that burns people out. Short-term win, long-term loss. Causal ambiguity. I mean, just straight up, they had a ton more support, and that probably played a big factor in why they were able to replicate that result. It worked before. Are the numbers the same? The percentages of direct dials and stuff are probably not going to be the same in your database. The good news is a lot of this is just a question of simple math. Figure out your direct percentage. They were at 81. What are you? You can literally inverse and multiply and divide and plug it into a spreadsheet and get what your then percentage should be. And same thing with going viral. I mean, one of the things you got to remember is your buyer and is your industry the same? But we work with a company at Vendition called Get Around. They're doing car sharing service. They're literally B2C. So their best times of day to call are late morning and after work. And we always hear prime call hours, or well, other than the speech this morning, prime call hours are, 8 to 10 and 4 to 6. Those are the worst times of day to call consumers. Best practice, it's different. So kind of the key things to keep in mind, questions to ask, ways to start diving in and critically evaluating this stuff.
And I'd also suggest their tools are great. There's lots of free tools out there and free. A lot of times I don't know how many people are at a startup. It's good to be a tech geek in sales, right? And there's so many really kind of cool ways to get data, to see who's coming to your website, to see who's interested. And you can get, whether it's a free trial, a free version of those. I'm a big proponent of letting people kind of do that and then making an assessment later if it's something that should be adopted at the enterprise level. But any enterprising thing that you can do to find a tool that gets you a little bit of a competitive advantage, I think is really, really a great thing for an SDR to do. Just a side.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk about one of the most common best practices that we see all the time. That meetings should be the goal of the SDR role. So how many of you guys, your comp is based off meetings, at least in part? Pretty much everyone. So Dawn and I worked together at Mattermark. When we went to Mattermark, I'm building out the comp structure. I was adamant, SDR team's going to set meetings. This inevitably led to a little bit of a conflict because Mattermark's product was an online tool. And a big part of our sales process was free trials. And we were trying to figure out the best way to market the product, get people into it, do all that stuff. But it just made sense from an SDR standpoint. Of course, we goal them off meetings. They can do whatever they want with the free trials, but we got to get them talking to sales so we can actually, get their money.
So let me explain what happened there. So I'm a marketing person. We're looking at the data, and everyone heard of magic moments, trying to understand when someone is a magic moment, a piece of software where we know they're going to convert. So what we were looking at is the data, and we were seeing that they had to use the software right away, and the magic moment was that they created a list or they searched, right? So I'm looking at the data after we would do a campaign, and the first thing I see is that no one is activating their software. And I go to the SDR team, and I'm like, I'm trying to figure out, it took me a while to understand what was going on, but the SDR team, in order to secure a meeting, what they were doing was they were not giving access of software to our prospects. They said, your AE will set that up for you, right? So you had...
We thought it was a carrot.
They were
show up to the meeting.
They're looking at it as a carrot. I'm fucking enraged because I have these programs and the engagement, and I want people to hit that. And so it was, she says it's a friendly conflict. It was all out war at one point because,
This was the first time I was allowed to swear in the workplace. It was fucking amazing.
It was like, so it was just like this, what are we doing here, right? Because, and I understood her position, right? Because getting a meeting, it's concrete. I've hit my quota, right? It's the most important thing I can do.
It's in the CRM.
Yeah, I totally understood that, but you have to make sure that there's not misalignment. And the most important thing that we could do for our customers and to get our revenue is to make sure the SDRs weren't actually setting up meetings, that they were actually making sure it was a successful trial, right? And so that's what we kind of got into this. And I joke, it wasn't that much of an epic conflict. But it was more kind of, what can we do to train these SDR teams to sit there and say, how am I going to create a really successful trial for these customers so they convert? And that was something that was really uncomfortable because how do you measure a successful trial? Because they could have a successful trial but not buy for some reason. Maybe they got undercut by the competition. Does that mean the SDR didn't do their job? Right? So it just becomes a very, very delicate situation where things aren't necessarily black and white. You're laughing.
Yeah, no, I'm going through it right now.
Okay,
So out of curiosity, how many of you guys have free trials as a part of your products? Okay, so this is we've had a lot of fun talking about this and preparing over the past few weeks. So if you guys want to chat afterwards, come find us because we've got a lot of interesting things that we learned from this process.
And the free trial makes things, it's a good thing and a bad thing depending on, one, the quality of your software, the industry. It could be something that, sometimes a free trial, depending on the ACV, that could be a one-call close, where maybe the SDR can handle it from, soup to nuts, but then all of a sudden that pisses off the AE, right? So you just have all of these different dynamics in a sales cycle. As you get more towards the enterprise, it gets a lot more lumpy. Things aren't smooth, right? Again, you have to look at the data and you have to take care of all of that. You have to take that all into consideration.
And you have to keep the customer journey. That was the thing I forgot as an SDR manager. I forgot about the customer journey. They want to use the product, great. Put the product in front of them, have them fall in love with it. How many of you guys, if you got a tool that helped you do your job better, would be totally fine with someone taking that away a week later? No, there ain't hell hath no fury like an AE about to lose a tool. So get them in the product, get them set up, and then they can talk to the AE once they're already sold on it. I missed it. Full admission, I missed that one. But I missed it because of these obvious things. We got the pipeline it goes through. Short-term win. I want a nice, easy win. I want a big old paycheck. I want to make sure my SDRs have something they can track in the CRM. Causal ambiguity. Meetings mean revenue, right? The more people we get in front of the AEs, therefore, the more they should be able to close. We didn't realize that the math didn't back that up until it was kind of too late. It worked before. Literally everyone in this room raised their hand when they said that they have meetings as some part of their comp. And going viral, literally, there was nothing else out there that said that SDRs could be judged on anything other than meetings or revenue or some variant thereof. I had never seen or heard of SDRs being comped on something to do with getting engagement in a trial. And as a result, I missed it. And this wasn't a huge deal. This wasn't a huge world-ending thing. But it did teach me at least, to be skeptical. So we walked through, looking at the product, we talked about magic moments or making things sticky.
It also talks about sales should also be heavily invested in a product qualified lead, in these data that is tracking how a product is being used, right? That's not just a sales and marketing thing that you're using for growth experiments, right? If you're a salesperson and you understand how your customers are using the product through the free trial and what their magic moment is, as you're talking to them, you can walk them through that. And that will help go along with the sale. It's more of kind of a consultative and solution type selling. And that's what people need. They need to get value out of the software. I own my own company now, and I depend on all of these tools that I have. And sometimes, when someone calls and they're willing to help me and walk me through something, that saves me a tremendous amount of time. Or if I don't know how to use it, because I have no time on my hands these days, and I don't need someone selling me. I need someone helping me. Anyway.
So again, thinking about what we considered a best practice, thinking about what makes it sticky. What's the conversion breakdown? Dawn built this spreadsheet that I can still see it, but it was like a 4-sheet spreadsheet that had every single stage in the entire life cycle of the product, all the way from them looking at the website, all the way to starting the trial, using the search feature, saving a search, creating an account, inviting somebody else, all the way through to them actually closing, and tracked every single step of that conversion process. There was no correlation between a meeting and a sale. There was a correlation between them activating their account and a close. That moment was way earlier than we thought it was. And that's looking at the data. So getting that tracking stuff, if you're dealing with something that's got a free software, that's something, go talk to your engineers. Go talk to people, especially those of you that have the free trials, go get in the engineers' faces. Say, I want to see, how can I understand, see where these things are. Test it out. Watch the conversion watch the conversions at every single step. Look at the overall company win rate. Where can we expand awareness? The role of the SDR isn't just to generate revenue, it's to generate awareness. You're advocating and advertising and marketing as much as you are just going for a close, and making sure that the rest of the company understands that can be a huge, huge source of strength. Look, this is all we're looking at. Let the data dictate what the best practice is for you. Best practice does not mean it will work for you, but it is a really good starting point to have a discussion, look at the data, and adapt so that you can actually get something.
And I'll give you another best practice. Look at your whole funnel, right? One of the things people try to do is, if sales aren't converting, they'll say we'll get more MQLs, right? But look at your whole funnel, because you never need to make a big adjustment at any one part of the funnel. You could make small little adjustments at different parts of the funnel and get to the same desired result. And so you have to start taking both, qualitative and quantitative approach to this, understanding that, oh my God, don't try to solve your sales conversion leads by bringing more MQLs in.
Yes.
Understand everywhere in the funnel and understand that if I make a 0.5 percentage point difference in, from this rate to MQL to opportunity to whatever to SQL, I can get to my results. And it doesn't take, those are sales hacks, right? A great hack is, as soon as someone signs, they're at their happiest. That's the point. Right there, you ask them for a referral, right? Boom. Okay? So you have to start thinking about, and that's at the bottom of the funnel, right? And so you have to think about those hacks because they're going to help you right back at the other side of the funnel. Does that make sense? So, people always forget that. And as someone now who is prospecting, the first thing I do when I sign a contract is I'm like, tell me 3 other companies who could use my services, right? And if they sign, I'm going to give you a half a month, 50% off of my retainer, right? So always start doing these kind of hacks that are going to help you in the long run. I'm all about guerrilla marketing. I'm all about hacks because you can't buy your way into the market. I mean, you can, you get enough funding, but at some point it's going to crash and burn.
You're not Elon Musk.
Okay. That too.
I'm fun with it. Okay, so some quick takeaways. Okay, be mindful of your persona. Check and see if the persona matches the person who you're getting the data from in the first place. Looking at your sales cycle, know the whole funnel, top to bottom, literally from first looking at the website all the way to the close. And this last thing, be paranoid. Be like Andy Grove. Success breeds complacency, complacency breeds failure. Be paranoid. Don't trust anything, advocate, ask questions. The biggest thing you can do is ask questions. Not to be difficult, but ask the questions. If you don't, you'll hurt yourself more if you don't than if you do. You're not going to piss people off. Also, look at the market. There are a ton of people out there who give you great frameworks to figure out what's a best practice and what's not. So if you guys, they're recording this session, obviously. You can download the deck. I don't know where, but it will be available. John Barrows has a math of sales calculator that's fantastic. HubSpot has a great map your funnel metric. Winning by Design and Yako has another really good kind of inbound framework.
Yako's my favorite.
She's
probably I'm one of his biggest fans. If you can get access, he gives a lot of free stuff online. He does a lot of short videos. Guy's super.
He's hysterical. So just kind of, if I could give you a quick tip, individual all the way up to org. Barrows has a ton of great stuff for like an individual person who's trying to like hack their own funnel. HubSpot's a little bit bigger, and then Jocko's really great with the big orgs. So last thing is just stay in touch. I made QR codes because I'm trying to go techie. So to get in touch with Dawn, all of her stuff's up there. To get in touch with me, all my stuff's here. One last plug is just I recently launched a podcast with Casey Jones of A Better Jones Consulting called The Other Side of Sales. We're specifically trying to highlight the other sales professionals in the world, the people who are LGBTQ, non-white, non-male. Not that we're not going to talk to some straight white guys, but really trying to share the untold stories of the sales profession to try and change the conversation, as well as occasionally her and I will have some conversations around things that we think matter to us. Like we just recorded an episode last week on whether or not wearing heels to work was a good idea, which I'm now going to amend that conversation and say I probably wish I'd worn flats today, but that's for a different reason. So please stay in touch, and please thank Dawn for jumping in here. We asked her to do this a week and a half ago.